Hi everyone, welcome to the Demystifying Lyme Detox webinar. This is your essential guide to effective detoxing. I'm Tim Yarbrough. I'm the Wellness Director here at Rawls MD and Vital Plan. And Dr. Rawls, the Medical Director, will be joining us shortly. I just want to remind you, if you stick around for the entirety, we've got a special offer for you at the end of the webinar. We're gonna be giving you a way to get Unlocking Lyme, Dr. Rawls' book, for free. You just pay shipping, so stick around and we'll explain how that works. This is a huge topic. I know a lot of you may be thinking you've got some kind of toxins in you. We all do, from a variety of ways, but we get them in us. And there's a whole slew of options, from 5-day to 10-day detoxes, paleo, juicing, lots of different options I'm sure you've heard about out there. And when we had people register for this event, a lot of folks told us what they do for detoxing. So we got everything from infrared sauna, a lot of Epsom salt baths, activated charcoal using herbs like milk thistle, chlorella. So there's a whole lot of different options here, and it can be pretty overwhelming. We had over 3,700 people register for this webinar, so it just goes to show this is a really popular topic this time of year, but also among folks with Lyme and similar conditions, Herxheimer reactions, and just how to navigate all of that. So really glad to have Dr. Rawls here with us. He's going to help sort out a lot of the confusion here and try to simplify things for you and bust some of the common myths, explain all about how toxins get in and how to enhance them getting out. So he is someone that has dealt with Lyme personally, and as a board certified gynecologist and a medical doctor who holds his license in North Carolina, he's really passionate about sharing his learnings from all of his experiences so he can hopefully help people like you, accelerate your path to better health. He is the author of Unlocking Lyme, a best-selling book all about Lyme disease, and is recently featured on the People's Pharmacy. So I'll go ahead and welcome him on and turn him over for part one, the presentation, before we get to part two, which will be answering your questions in the Q&A portion. So Dr. Rawls, if you'll join us now, please.
Hey, thank you, Tim, and it's great to have everybody attending. I am a physician. In my early part of my career, I was a gynecologist and ended up being derailed in my late 40s, early 50s with Lyme disease, and that's occupied my life. And since then, it has been more of an education than medical school or anything else I've done in my career. It definitely changed my life. Interestingly, some ways for the better, because I learned things and it pushed me to master skills that I would not have otherwise learned. I ended up finding that the conventional medical options for Lyme disease weren't very valuable to me. I didn't have the luxury of going to find a Lyme disease specialist, so I had to figure it out on my own, and ultimately I did. I recovered my health. I've been helping people ever since. That thought of giving back is something that once you make it through something that's that much of a struggle, then you want to give back. So the second half of my career has been devoted to that, helping understand these mysterious diseases like chronic Lyme, fibromyalgia, and so many others, and moving to ways that we can help people and really help people help themselves. So when you talk about detoxification, you're talking about a fundamental part of the recovery process. And it's really important that a lot of people think, well, do I need to do this detox and cleanse my system before I start recovery? And detox isn't something you really just do and then move on to something else. It is something that's an integral part of the recovery process. It has to be there as part of the whole thing. And so when I look at detoxification, I'm really talking about the whole recovery process and what we have to do to regain health. And it's never just take an antibiotic or do this or do that. It's a process of enhancing the ability of the body to restore itself. So first off, I think understanding toxins. What are we talking about here? There are a lot of different things. There are a lot of different terms that are used. So it's important to really understand what the terms mean and how we best use those terms. So everybody knows what a poison is. A poison is something that causes death or kills people. And when you look at any kind of substance that's foreign to the body, at a certain level, it turns into a poison. So some things have low dose that they're poisons. Other things, it requires more. But even therapeutic drugs given in a higher dose than the therapeutic level can be classified as toxins. They can do harm. This word that we use, toxin, actually only refers to things of biological origin, which is really interesting. We all tend to use it interchangeably to refer to any kind of toxin substance, but the true definition is just things of biologic origin. So that can be external things, jellyfish stings, poison ivy, but it also can be internal. And the internal sources are more what is pertinent to us that are talking about chronic Lyme disease. Mycotoxins from mold, mold spores that get in the body and you accumulate toxins. When you have an overload of Candida, the Candida is producing toxins. And then there's endotoxins, which is a really interesting thing because it's not an actual toxin produced by a microbe. Endotoxins we hear about being tied to Herxheimer reactions. Basically, an endotoxin is when bacteria are killed, then the pieces of the bacteria become inflammatory. So when you look at that concept and the fact that all of us have trillions of microbes in our body, we are all having, healthy people are having a certain amount of die-off of the bacteria, and it's the job of the immune system to clean that up. So all of us have it at a low level, but if it gets to the point where it's somewhat overwhelming, then it becomes part of that symptomatology of Lyme disease. Often when you're treating someone, it becomes more acute in the form of a Herxheimer reaction. But it is not a toxin produced by the bacteria. All the microbes we're talking about for Lyme disease do not produce toxins that harm the host. So that is an exotoxin. An exotoxin is a toxin produced by the microbes, and it's typically a soil bacteria, rare soil bacteria, anthrax, botulinum toxin. These microbes are actually producing toxins, so they're not really involved in Lyme disease, and that's not what we're talking about. Now, toxicant are things that are man-made. Petroleum residues from using petroleum, driving cars, using petroleum to create plastics, mining operations, chemical plants, pesticides, anything that's man-made is considered a toxicant. But a lot of people, and even myself, you find that you use those words interchangeably. Xenobiotic is another word that we hear more frequently, and xenobiotic can be toxicant or toxicant, toxins or toxicants, and it's typically something that has a certain biological effect. It acts like a neurotransmitter. It acts like a hormone. It's like a lot of the plastic residues that leach into water in the bottles have an estrogenic effect. It's one of the factors in breast cancer and also prostate cancer and problems in men from decreased testosterone. So xenobiotics are things that have a hormonal-like activity. Added up, and there are thousands, many thousands of chemicals that are in our environment that weren't here 100 years ago. And it all adds up. It's how much a role it plays in disease is hard to quantitate because we're all saturated. We all have some of these chemicals that are unnatural in our bodies now. So I put them on a list. I look at all the different factors that contribute to chronic illness. Diet, stress, artificial radiation sources like a computer screen, free radicals, microbes, and toxins is one thing on the list, and it's usually not by itself. It's usually accompanied by all of these other things, but it is a factor, and it's a factor that we have to deal with to get well. So how do these toxins cause harm or toxicants? The big part, the thing that we're worried about in Lyme is they disrupt immune system functions. And that can be really problematic. Any kind of thing that contributes to the immune dysfunction contributes to the overall problem. But they also do other things. Different chemicals, different substances do different things. They bind to our DNA. They bind to our proteins. They disrupt our cell membranes. They act like really potent free radicals. They mimic hormones, neurotransmitters, and they're a big source of inflammation in the body. Adds up over time. You compromise your immune system, you inhibit healing, you disrupt homeostasis, which is the balance of hormones in the body, and you allow these microbes that we have in the background to flourish. So when I see Lyme disease, I don't see it as an infection with a microbe. We all have a spectrum of microbes. Healthy people have microbes in their tissues. That's starting to come out in the research now. High numbers of people have mycoplasma, Bartonella. Virtually everybody on the planet has Epstein-Barr, CME, and a whole list of other herpes-type viruses. So we all have these things, these microbes in the margins that I call them, and they all have the characteristic of living inside cells that makes them different than other microbes, like microbes that cause pneumonia or other kinds of problems. So they're deeply in our tissues, they're dispersed throughout the body, and when you disrupt immune system's functions enough, you set up this perpetual tug of war that it's not a microbe, it's all these microbes that are just like a pot boiling over that results in all of the symptoms that we have. Higher bacterial die-off, so that's part of the symptom. So the symptoms are coming from that tug of war between the immune system, not an overgrowth of the bacteria themselves. And then when you try to do something about it, you accentuate those reactions, and that's what we call this Hertzheimer thing that we have to deal with. It's a vicious cycle in the making. You have toxins, you have stress, you eat bad food, it disrupts your immune system functions, you end up with microbes flourishing. That impairs the body's ability to get rid of toxins, so you end up making the whole system worse. So you're holding on to toxins, that's making it even worse, and that just contributes to the problem. So you hear about detoxification being complicated, that you've got to go through all these rituals to get it done. And to a certain extent, yes, the body's detoxification systems are unbelievably sophisticated and complex. But in helping the process, enhancing the process of detoxification is really not as much as you would think. It's really a matter of limiting the toxins coming in, helping the toxins go out. And so that's what we're going to talk about, ways that we can do that. I like to think of it as a pond at the base of a stream. Our body is like that pond. So the pond is, you've got the fast-moving water coming in, and it slows down, and so any sediment and toxins that are in the stream get sedimented out. So in our bodies, that's in our fatty tissue. So we want to clear out that end stream so we don't have dirty water coming in, and we want to help stir up that stream and get those toxins out the outflow. So how do you understand body toxins enter the body? That's pretty simple. You can eat them, you can get them through your mouth, you can breathe them in, and you can get them through the skin. So when you're talking about most man-made toxins environment, that's the only way that they can get in your body. Now, other sources of things that would be toxic are the endotoxins from the microbes that are generated internally. And again, everybody has that to a very, very low degree. People with Lyme disease are going to have it a lot more, especially if they're undergoing treatment. And then just basic metabolism. Just generating energy in the body creates byproducts. Waste products, carbon dioxide, and all of those things have to be removed from the body, and the body has very efficient systems of doing that. So step one in this whole process is just cleaning up the inflow, cleaning up that stream coming into the pond. One of the top of my list concerns about detoxification and health in general is the amount of processed food that people are eating. When you look at all of the refined food products out there, not only are they loaded with abnormally processed carbohydrates that we just aren't used to, but they have a lot of preservatives and other foreign substances. Getting a lot of that in our food, with the processed food diets that we get, and it's a real problem. You know, it's carbohydrate load is probably the #1 contributor to illness in the world right now, and especially in our country. You know, and we get it all day. We eat a box of cereal with milk in the morning, and then we get a cookie snack in the middle of the day, or a healthy breakfast bar, and then we have a sandwich with a big load of bread or bun at time, and then another carbohydrate snack in the afternoon, and carbohydrate drinks. Most drinks out there have 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrate and 12 to 16 ounces. That's a huge load. That's about enough carbohydrate for a whole day in a drink. And then pasta and other kinds and more bread at supper. The carbohydrate load is terrible, and it goes well beyond gluten thing. You see all these products out there that are gluten-free now, but they're still loaded with carbohydrates. And it grows abnormal bacteria in the gut. It stimulates pathogens in the gut. The disruption of gut function disrupts immune systems even further. It causes insulin resistance and eventually diabetes. That disturbs all of the balance of all the hormones in the body, and that all compromises detoxification. And then when we're not eating the carbohydrates, we're eating a lot of meat from animals and soybeans to get the protein in. This animal, this hog, will spend all of its life in a 10 by 10 compartment, and it will be fed loads of corn and soybeans. And all that corn and soybeans has little bits, little small microscopic amounts of herbicides, pesticides, and a variety of other chemicals. All of those things are concentrated in this animal's fat. And when we eat that fat, we get all those toxins, and then they're concentrated in our fatty tissues. So the larger the animal, the higher the concentration. It moves up the food chain. So the bigger the animal, so you're going to have a lot higher concentrations of fat in large animals like hogs and cows. So you're going to have a lot less of it in fish. So fish is your best protein source. and eggs are a very good protein source. Dairy depends on where you're getting your dairy, but dairy can be a problem too for several reasons. If it is grass-fed organic dairy, it's not quite so bad, but the majority of it is fattened with corn and soybeans, and all of those toxins are concentrated in the milk, along with hormones and other things that they use in it. In addition, a lot of milk products, which are cultured yogurt products, actually have a lot of mold growing in them. Cottage cheese has the highest concentration of mold of any food product, and it's all there. So here I'm not suggesting that we never eat grains or never eat dairy or never eat large meat, red meat, but you have to use good sense about it. It's hard to live in our world and live completely grain-free or bean-free. You can do a very strict paleo diet or even a ketogenic diet, but it's really hard to do. So I find that yeah, you just got to do it smartly. You know, you look for organic, and you look for good choices in the food where the food has been raised humanely in smaller amounts compared to other things. Rice is very well tolerated. There are lower carbohydrate grain-like sources like quinoa. And some of those things can be a part of a healthy diet as long as they're kept in proportion. So the problem is all these things are concentrated in the food and they move up the food chain. The larger the animal, the higher up on the food chain, the more the toxic substances are concentrated in tissues. So guess where we are? Right at the very top of the food chain, the very top. And so all that stuff we eat concentrates in our tissues. So when you're looking at any kind of product, especially meat, organic, if you're eating red meat, grass-fed, organic, and those kinds of things are becoming more available. We're seeing elk in the supermarkets now. It's not wild elk, but it is grass-fed, and it's a lot leaner than all of your beef. It's going to have a lot less toxins in it. Water is an easy one. You can filter your water. That's something that almost goes unsaid at this point. There are a lot of contaminants in municipal water supplies, and there are a lot of potential contaminants coming through wells. So you're smart to filter your water. The most thorough filtration is with a reverse osmosis filter, but you can do canister filters. There are a lot of good canister filters that get 99% of the impurities out. They can be installed under your sink. You can use devices like this pitcher at the very least. And many people are going as far as installing whole house filters, which takes the chlorine out of a municipal water supply. So filtering your water is pretty easily. It's not that hard in this day and time to get really clean water. Alkalinizing your body. When your body, when you eat, when you break down food, you generate acidity, certainly with some foods. If you've got a really high grain and meat diet, you're generating a lot of acid, and your body needs to alkalinize that acid. And if it doesn't have that, it pulls minerals from your bones to do that. So alkalinized water is an option. You can do that. There are water alkalinizers. You can buy alkalinized water with a higher pH. You can also do apple cider vinegar and lemon juice, which is really nice. And basically, you're taking an acid. Apple cider vinegar is a great way to add acidity to your stomach, but once it goes through, it's neutralized in the small bowel, and you absorb acetate and citrate instead of citric acid and acetic acid. that citrate and acetic and acetate are really nice buffers that help alkalinize. But even better is eating an alkaline diet, which is really high in vegetables. So we're going to get around to the big reasons why vegetables are so remarkably important. Minimizing alcohol. Alcohol is a toxin. I mean, there's no way around it. Humans have been eating it, drinking it for all of eternity, but no matter how you get around it, it's a toxin. People that are recovering from any kind of health adversity probably should avoid alcohol. Your recovery will go faster. You will feel better. Once you're recovered and your reserves are built up, you can do that occasionally. It does add pleasure in life, but I've gotten so that I can do it, but I do it recognizing it as just a way to accentuate food. I'll often go in a restaurant and either my wife and I will split one glass of wine, or in some restaurants you can order 3 ounces of wine, and I do that with a meal. I actually don't do it very often, but occasionally it's really nice and it's something that I can enjoy. And I actually enjoy it more doing it less and less often than if I do it regularly, because then it just becomes that everyday thing you always do. Make it special. Respect the toxicity of drugs. All drugs are potential poisons, every single one of them. Use them carefully and respect that toxicity. Use them the minimum doses that you can and for the least amount of time that you can, and work on restoring your health so you don't need the pharmaceuticals. Don't smoke, as I said. Great way to really limit your recovery and ruin your health. And I would say most of the people that are tuned into this probably are not smoking. Mold is a big issue. That's a webinar all in itself. I've got a chapter in the book that talks about mold and what to do about mold. Mold definitely can get in the way of recovery. I talk to people all the time when I do consults, and one of the first questions I ask is, you know, do you have a basement? Have you checked your crawl space? Have you looked for mold in the house? Because it can be a factor in recovery. If you are mold sensitive and you have mold in your house, you will not get well. This thing, though, that you can't get rid of the mycotoxins unless you use some special binders, I don't believe. There's no science that suggests that. And personally, I was stuck in an office for a long time that had mold. And even just as short as a weekend, I would start to purge the toxins and feel better. And then Monday morning, I would be right back in it again. But if I took a week or two vacation, then I cleared them really quickly. And I am very mold sensitive. I can walk into a room and tell if a building has mold. I start getting a scratchy feeling in the back of my throat. I smell it, I feel it, I know it's there. And but I feel like your body is trying to eliminate this thing, and it certainly has natural mechanisms for doing that. So if you're accentuating all of your detoxification systems by doing the right things, you'll get rid of mold toxins. Our air, mercury. Everybody's talking about mercury. And it's become a fact of life. So where's mercury coming from? It's coming from coal-powered power plants. That's where virtually all the mercury in the atmosphere and in our environment is coming from. Coal is very high in mercury and other heavy metals. And when you burn coal to produce electricity and you dump the smoke out in the air, it precipitates out on the land. It gets in our food, it gets in our plants, and it gets in all animals. And larger animals eat those smaller animals, and it concentrates up the food chain. That's why you hear about large fish out in the ocean, swordfish and tuna, with high levels of mercury in their tissues, because they are actually, when the smaller animals eat the when it's moving from animal to animal up the food chain, that last animal that eats it is going to have the highest concentration, and it's going to be getting a continual dose. So yeah, I guess again, where are we? Right at the top of that food chain. So we're getting that mercury. We're getting it in all of our food. We're getting it everywhere. So the big question is, how much does it contribute to illness, and what do we do about it? Doing about it is trying to limit the intake. You know, you try to be in a place where you're breathing clean air, you're doing organic food, you're not eating the big animals, which are going to have higher levels of mercury in them. So you try to limit your intake, and you get better at moving it out. And we're going to talk about ways that you can do that down the line here. But it's hard to quantitate how much it is contributing to illness. If you give any population of people with a chronic illness, most all of them are going to have mercury in their body. But the problem is, if you take a control population of healthy people, they're going to have mercury in their body too. So how much it is contributing is hard to know. I think it's a vicious cycle again. If you're in chronic illness and you're having a hard time detoxifying, then you're going to build this up, and it's going to be more of an issue. So again, we clean up that inflow. We'll talk about that more as we go. Breathing clean air. Finding clean air is getting harder. Rural air is different than urban air. No doubt about it. If you live near industry, then there's going to be a lot of more particulate matter in the air, but it travels a long way. It can travel across oceans and all around the world. There's actually more pollution in the northern hemisphere than there is in the southern hemisphere because people up here. So we have more pollution, and it's circulating around. But another thing that's in air is positive ions. Positive ions are particles that are deficient in electrons, so they're charged positively. Electrons give the negative charge, and so if you're short on electrons, you have a positive charge. Urban air, air in cities, and air inside buildings, inside homes, is loaded with positive ions. So when you look at this process of inflammation, we tend to talk about inflammation from white blood cells and free radicals and these chemical processes, but inflammation is actually a state of electron deficiency. It's really interesting. So all these things we call free radicals that are in our body that are causing damage, basically what those are electron deficient molecules that pull electrons off of other things, our DNA, our proteins, our cell membranes, and they are very destructive. So when you look at it from that point of view, from an electrical point of view, inflammation is an electron deficient state. So if you're breathing in lots of positive ions, that's another thing that's going to rob electrons from you. So what you want to breathe in is negative ions, negatively charged particles that have electrons to donate. Where do you find those? Pine forest, open water, waterfalls especially. And those are the cleanest air. We talk about the difference in urban air and rural area, but if you're in an agricultural area that they're spraying a lot of chemicals, rural area can be worse. So we're really talking about natural areas instead of rural areas. Pine forest, forest in general, oceans, lakes. So these are the places that we get the most beneficial air. And there are people that have actually looked at this. There are researchers around the world, but there has been a group in Japan that have been looking at the effects of negative ions in the environment, in pine forest especially, and they found that pine forest increased natural killer cell activity. just being out in what they call forest bathing once a month was enough to enhance immune activity, enhance feelings of well-being, reduce anxiety, reduce depression. But they felt, well, yes, the negative ions are having an effect. That's been proven. But was there something else there? So they started looking at the particles that were being given off, essentially the aromas that were being given by the pine trees. And they found, and they isolated these compounds, and they were able to, they did a study where they put Japanese medical students in a hotel room for 3 days, and they infused these essential oils that they had gotten from the trees into the rooms, and even in a 3-day period, they found the exact same effects: increased natural killer cell, enhanced immune function, reduced anxiety, reduced depression. So we think it's the negative ions plus these other things. So a lot of reasons to get out in nature. Our indoor air. Can we bring nature into the inside? You know, your indoor air is loaded with positive ions. Can we improve that? Well, first thing you can do is get a air filtration system, either compact ones that go in the room or a whole house, to pull some of the toxins that are inherent inside a house out. But you can also get a negative ion generator. Now, these things have been around for a while, but most of these devices also produce ozone, which is a problem that isn't good for you. But there is a new generation of them that are coming on the market, and I have a lot of interest in this area. We are starting to see more better machines, and I'll probably have some reviews on some of these devices in the future. But also, so saturating our inside environment with negative ions is really good for us. But also these chemicals that are called phytoncides that come from the trees are also found in a lot of essential oils. So diffusing essential oils inside your house may be another way that you can improve your indoor air and make it much like nature. Another thing, the last area to look at is skin. We put a lot of things on our skin. There are a lot of things in our deodorants. Our deodorants have high levels of aluminum. There's so many toxins that come in skin products. Even sunscreens have been implicated for the possibility of being carcinogens when the sun, when they're exposed to skin. A group that's doing a lot of good work in this area is the Environmental Working Group. I would strongly encourage you to go to their website, ewg.org. They've got great information on skin products and what products are really the ones to use. So, cleaning up the inflow. Steer clear of those processed foods, less meat from large animals, minimizing dairy, maybe not eliminating all these things, because we do want to get pleasure from our food. We just need to do it smarter. Filtering water, alkalinizing the body, alcohol, drugs, smoking, all of those things to minimize. Being aware of mold, and we will have some future blogs, and there's a lot of information in the book about how to deal with that mold, clean air, and just being mindful of what goes on your skin. So the next step is, how do we enhance the detoxification systems of the body? And this is really important. So you hear about this, oh, I'm going to detox, I'm going to purge all the toxins out of my body, and then I'm good, right? Well, not really. I don't think that detoxification should be an acute process. I think it's an ongoing process that not only lasts through a recovery, but lasts through a lifetime. It is how you go about life. So is there something wrong with a 10-day detox? Certainly not. A 10-day detox is a great way to get started. It's a great way to initiate the process, but it's not an end-all. It's not that you purge everything from your body in 10 days and then you move on from there. So how do we remove toxins? What parts of the body do that? The immune system is important for cleaning up all those endotoxins from the microbes and taking care of the microbes, cleaning up debris, taking out old worn out cells, taking out cells that have been infected with microbes. The liver takes care of most of those artificial toxins that reach your body, and it pushes them into the intestines or kidneys. We do breathe some toxins out, and actually sweat is a great way to remove certain kinds of toxins. Now, this is a pretty busy slide, but it's really just important to know the unbelievable capacity that the body has to deal with a huge number. All those 200 plus thousand chemicals, our body can detoxify those things. It has an almost unlimited enzyme system called the cytochrome P450 system that takes those fat soluble things and makes them water soluble. You can either move them into our GI tract or take them out through our kidneys. So they're converted in bile. They are sent in the proper direction. And of course, we need all the nutrients and all the support to make sure that our liver is functioning properly. So that brings me to a topic that a lot of people are concerned about, this thing called methylation mutations. There's a big concern about that right now. And so it's nicknamed MTHFR because of this enzyme that's so important called methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. And what that thing does is it takes an amino acid called cysteine that typically is found in meat, converts it to methylfolate, which is, and that is able to convert into methionine. Methionine is really important because it is the key to so many things in the body. It is the key for amino acid synthesis and formation of DNA and RNA and detoxification and glutathione, that all-important antioxidant, and so many other things in the body. So you got to have methionine. And if you don't have that enzyme, that is potentially a problem. But there are a lot of different mutations that allow for the effective enzyme. In fact, 40% of the population carries at least one abnormal gene for that enzyme, so they don't make it as well. And 12% of the population are really compromised as far as making that enzyme because they've got two abnormal genes. That's a lot of people. That's over 50% of all of the populations in the world. And that brings to a very important question. Why do all these people have this mutation in this major pathway? Nature typically eliminates bad genes through natural selection. Bad genes don't persist from one generation to another to another to another. They are eliminated. That's part of evolution. The biggest part of evolution through all of time is eliminating genes that have become effective, mutations in genes, so organisms can persist. So why on earth would this major pathway, with more than half of the population, be having abnormal genes? I think that's a question. I've never heard anybody else ask it, and I think it's so important. But the answer is because it's not a major pathway. It's a backup pathway. As long as you have lots of dietary methylfolate, you do not need to convert homocysteine into methylfolate to make methionine. You can just take the methylfolate and make methionine, all right? So if you look at the human diet over several 100,000 years, humans foraged food. They eat leaves, and they ate stems, and they eat roots, and they eat bark, and none of this food had any resemblance to anything in a grocery store today. Very low in carbohydrate and fat, so they had to eat lots of it. But what it did have is it was loaded with nutrients and it was loaded with folates. So all of the foods that humans ate for hundreds of thousands of years was loaded with enough folate that you really didn't need to use that pathway. So as mutations accumulated, as they inevitably do, nature didn't get rid of them because it just didn't need to, because humans weren't using that pathway. The only time they used that pathway was maybe in the dead of winter when there was no plant material and the only thing to eat was animals, which was really rare. Most humans were able to forage food in most locations despite that. So it's again, that's a backup pathway. So as long as you're getting plenty of that. But if you move into today, where humans are eating virtually nothing but grain and meat, which is very low in methylfolate, then that homocysteine pathway becomes essential, and if you don't have it, you're in trouble. So the message is, eat your vegetables, leafy greens, broccoli, asparagus, berries. All these things are loaded. But even our modern food sources don't equal those ancient forest foods. So if you've got a mutation, supplement. Methylfolate is the best form that you should take as a supplement. Folic acid needs to be converted by an enzyme. They load a lot of folic acid into processed food that don't do a thing for you. And just complementing that with the B vitamins, B6, B12, but the activated forms, and also SAMe. Vegetables. If you look at the most important thing for health in general and detoxification, it's vegetables. Vegetables do so many things. Not only do they provide folates, but they do lots of other things. They provide lots of other nutrients, vitamins, minerals, but a host of other things. It's your best source of dietary fiber. Vegetables are alkalinizing. They contribute important phytochemicals. The colors, the blues and blueberries, the yellows, the oranges, the greens, all these things are very important antioxidants that we don't get in any other food sources. And vegetables are naturally low in carbohydrate, so it helps fill your stomach without loading you up excessively. Cruciferous vegetables are really important because they affect your liver. They help your liver by enhancing your ability to process these xenoestrogens, these hormone-like substances. If you eat a lot of cruciferous, it enhances your ability, the ability of your liver to take care of those things. And then there's herbal therapy. All that ancient food was loaded with these protective chemicals. Humans had a much wider diversity of bacteria. They ate dirt. They ate whole animals. They didn't have a table with a plate and a fork and spoon. They ate off the ground. And they were getting a lot of things that were favorable, but they were also getting parasites and things that weren't so favorable too. And it's really interesting. When you look at what's missing from our diet, it's all these really important chemicals that used to be present in the foods that help balance the microbiome, to kill pathogens, to get rid of parasites. And our foods don't have that anymore. As we have moved through time and cultivated vegetables, we've cultivated the bitterness out. We don't like bitter food. And a lot of these phytochemicals are bitter. So we've selectively removed all these important things. So the only way you can really get them now is herbal therapy. A lot of herbs are bitter. And so herbs still retain those ancient phytochemicals that we don't have in our food anymore. I owe my recovery almost completely to herbal therapy. They suppress stealth microbes, but at the same time balance the gut microbiome instead of killing off normal flora. They balance the immune system, and they help flush the whole lymphatic system. So all of these things are really important. That big question, should you do organic? I think the guideline with organic is whenever it's practical. If it's within your pocketbook and it's good, fresh is more important than organic. I'd rather see I'd rather see people eat non-organic vegetables than not eat vegetables at all. So if it is practical for you to do so, organic is most important for thin-skinned fruits and vegetables like berries, apples, tomatoes. Less important if skins are thick, and especially if they can be peeled, like avocados, cucumbers, melons, citrus, that you're not eating the peel because not as much of the toxin is getting in. Again, Environmental Working Group does a good job of posting guidelines on which foods are okay to do organic or best organic and which foods are not. Fermented foods, humans have always eaten spoiled food, and it added their microbe diversity. And we're finding that our health is very much related to the diversity of our microbiome. Today, with a grain and meat-based diet and our sterile environment, humans have the lowest diversity of their microbiome than ever in the history of humans. So eating fermented foods of every variety, and if that's not practical, taking a probiotic is really important. Fasting. A lot of people add this on as part of a detox, and I think it's good. What are we doing with fasting? Basically, what we're doing with fasting is giving the digestive tract a rest. Our digestive tract, especially if you're eating all day and into the night, is working pretty hard, and it's pushing your liver, and especially if you're really working it hard by eating bad foods, it just needs a rest. So a fast is a good idea. There are a lot of different ways to do a fast. You can do a 3 to 6 day fast that you're doing only juice or water with lemon. Some people do one fasting day a week. Personally, I like to spread it out. I try to fast 12 hours out of every 24. So that gives my intestinal tract a rest, lets it do its job, and is practical for me. It's really hard to take the time out to do a 3 to 6 day fast because it's you really don't have much energy if you're not eating. So there are a lot of ways to do it. It can enhance detoxification. The only thing that I'll say about fast and my concern about doing a prolonged just a juice fast or just vegetable or fruit juices is you're not getting the fiber. And the fiber is essential for binding all of those toxins. Your liver is turning the fat soluble things into water soluble things, and that's coming through in your bile, and then it's going to be reabsorbed if you don't bind it with something. So your best binders are vegetable fiber. So leaching toxins out of your body slowly by eating lots of vegetables is the best thing that you can do to detoxify yourself. So yes, giving your bowel a rest from time to time is a good idea, but I don't think you need to do an excessive amount of fasting because again, you're not necessarily removing the toxins if you're not eating fiber to pull it through your digestive tract. They're just going to be reabsorbed. That's just something to think about. And a good night's sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're not detoxing. The two most important things that I think for detoxification are sleep and vegetables. They make more difference than anything else. You got to sleep. Sleep is when your body repairs itself. Sleep is when your body detoxifies. If you're not sleeping, if you're not getting plenty of rest, you will not detoxify your body. You can do all the detox gimmicks in the world. You can do all the detox protocols and products and everything else. And if you're not sleeping and you're not eating vegetables, you're not going to detoxify. That would be the biggest takeaway that I would have from this whole thing is eat lots of vegetables. Strive for 50 to 70% every single day and get plenty of rest. Do not discount the value of sleep. Stress is a big factor. Stress raises our adrenaline levels, and indirectly it inadvertently affects our ability to detox. That's a big one. That's going to be, we're going to talk about adrenals and stress down the line. And so stay tuned. We've got more webinars coming. So, and then you got this pond that has the toxins that are sedimented in the bottom, i.e. in the human body, in our fatty tissues. You got to get those things agitated to get them out the outflow. So you got to move blood. Best way to do that is exercising, moving your body. And it doesn't have to be going to a gym that's loaded with positive ions. It's getting outside and doing things. It's like everybody in our neighborhood uses these leaf blowers. My wife and I get out and rake leaves with a rake because it's great exercise. I walk every single day. I do, I take breaks from the computer and I get up and move. When I'm cooking a meal, I'm constantly moving around the kitchen. I don't use electrical devices. I chop everything. I do everything by hand. Movement moves blood. Blood moves toxins out of tissues. You got to exercise. You got to move blood to detoxify. It's wholly important. If you're at a point that you really can't exercise that much, there are other ways you can do it. Infrared sauna is an excellent way. Heating your body up makes your blood move. Exercise and infrared sauna are another great ways to increase natural killer cells, essential for getting. Infrared sauna is a little easier than regular sauna. Regular sauna heats the air to a very hot temperature, where the infrared sauna uses heat coils to actually radiate heat to your body. And you can do it very gently and very carefully. It's a great way to move blood in your system. Of all the things that you can do to start removing some of those heavy metals consistently, infrared sauna has more data than anything else. So it's a good thing to put on the list. And then you got to evacuate the toxins. If you're getting backed up, you just keep reabsorbing those toxins. You got to have a normal intestinal tract. That is a whole nother webinar that's coming. We'll be doing one on gut health that's important down the line. But it's yeah, restoring normal gastrointestinal function is so remarkably important in all of this. Supplements. Supplements can help. We talked about herbs. That's a great way. There are lots of great herbs that do help with the detoxification process in many ways. I'm very fond of a freshwater algae called chlorella that can be combined with the herb cilantro. There's some evidence that it does pick up heavy metals. How well it pulls them out of the body by itself is debatable. I think you need to eat a lot of vegetables along with it. I do warn people though that when you're looking at things to accentuate pulling metals out of the body and pulling it out of the fatty tissues, if you've got a lot stored in there, you can make yourself sick pretty quickly. So you've got to do it carefully and gently. You've got to pick up your own speed and find out what works for you. I like cilantro. Garlic is great for balancing the intestinal tract. Milk thistle and dandelion stimulate bile flow and protect the liver. Their milk thistle has been defined as a substance that can enhance the regeneration of liver cells. And if you've been abusing your liver for years, it's a really important thing to do. Dandelion is also very important. Glutathione, NAC, alpha lipoic acid are substances that are used in the detoxification process by the liver, taken as supplements. They can help bind some metals. Again, you've got to be really careful. If you've got a load of metals, then they can make you sick. Probiotics can help balance the gut. Red root is a nice herb. You use it intermittently. It's not something to use long term, but what it does is help flush the lymphatics, especially good for Herxheimer reactions. Binders. We hear a lot about binders, and the best binders that I know of are vegetables by far. Animal pectin, apple pectin, flax seeds, chia seeds. Those are other natural things that can have some of that effect. They're binding the toxins that help pull them out. Bentonite clay and charcoal are natural. Humans probably have eaten clay for a long time and eating charcoal. There are certainly many documented cases of people feeling like they were loaded on toxins and have had a taste for clay. But you got to be careful about that because it can pull. These are really strong binders, and they can pull a lot of good things, vitamins and other minerals that are important out of your body too. Artificial binders, cholestyramine, EDTA, DMSA, are more something that would be used under the care of a medical provider. Some doctors use these things. They do it. And there are a few situations where acute detoxification is indicated. But I think for most people, doing detoxification acutely, especially with these very potent binders, is pretty scary because you can pull a lot of toxins out of your tissues all at once and make you sick, and you can also pull a lot of other good things. So I see detoxification as a long-term, steady process. I like a gradual detoxification instead of an acute detoxification. I think you're going to do more good. And then there's a topic of what do you do about those fillings? This is a tough one. I've written about this in the book also. It's a hard question to answer. I've researched it for years. There are lots of people out there that have mercury in their fillings, and they do get mercury in their body. If you compare controls of people with significant amalgam fillings to people who don't, the people with amalgam fillings have higher levels of mercury. The problem is when you look at all the people out there with mercury in their fillings, the vast majority of them having health problems. So knowing how much it's actually contributing to illness is very, very hard to define. And what to do about it is just about as bad. To take them out, you have to go to a specialist. It costs a good amount of money. There is risk, and you do dump a lot of mercury in your system while you're having these things out. But that isn't the end of the problem. The composites they're using are plastics, and they don't hold up as well as the amalgam fillings. They don't fit as well. There is more risk of them actually becoming infected, and they have their own set of toxicity. There are people that are concerned that the composites that are replacing the amalgams may actually be just as toxic as the mercury. So this is a question that's hard to answer, and when I talk to people with this problem, I suggest that you put it on your list, but put it way down on your list. Do everything you can first. And if your health is you can get your health to the point that you're comfortable and you feel like you've recovered significantly, maybe you won't have to go through that very difficult question. But if you're not getting where you want to be, that's the point to think about doing the amalgams. But there's not really a straightforward answer with that one. It's a really sticky one. Coffee enemas. A lot of people are doing coffee enemas. You flush the whole colon with coffee. Basically what it's doing is the caffeine in the coffee stimulates bile flow. So you get a good flush on your liver, and that flushes some toxins through, and then you wash the toxins out. Problems with this are some people have found, some people have experienced that they've actually had perforations, And there have been a significant number of people that have got infections in the colon. In addition, if you do it enough, then it makes your colon lazy, so the only way you'll go is if you have an enema, which can be a real problem. What I worry about is biofilm. You hear a lot about biofilm. Everybody is having a war on biofilm, but you actually have beneficial biofilms in your body. And the most important one is in your colon. Biofilm is what protects the lining of your colon. There have been studies that have been recently come out showing that systemic antibiotics disrupt the biofilm protecting the colon and can have some significantly adverse responses such as ulcerative colitis and even contributing to cancer. I'm a little bit concerned that chronic use of coffee enemas actually disrupts this very, very important protective membrane. And what I find is people who do all the things that I've talked about, they improve their diet, they do all of these things, they typically don't need to do coffee enemas to feel well. So it's another acute detoxification that potentially can have a penalty. So again, just summarizing, eat more vegetables, fermented foods, fast, but maybe just 12 hours a day is enough. A good night's sleep every night. Stress is in managing stress. You got to move. You got to agitate that pond and get those toxins out. Infrared sauna is a good choice for that, especially if you're concerned about heavy metals. It's probably one of the best ways to start leaching them out. Constipation and taking good quality supplements. So that's you don't need a separate detox protocol before you start a Lyme protocol. It is the recovery. It's got to be an integral part of the whole thing all the way through. And it's really a matter of watching what you're eating, controlling your environment, and enhancing detoxification. So it's not just a 10-day process. That's fine to do as an initiation, but you have to keep it going right on through. So I'm going to let Tim pull back in here, and we're gonna move on to some questions and answers in just a few minutes.
Thanks for that presentation, Dr. Rawls. Hopefully that was really helpful for you guys to get a good foundation on all those different factors that play into how the toxins get in and the best ways to get them out. It might not always be as complicated as you think. Just some pretty simple principles to put into action there. We usually don't talk about products on the webinar, but since Dr. Rawls did mention chlorella, just wanted to mention that we have just started carrying that at Rawls MD's sister company, Vital Plan. So if you're interested in giving that a try, we are having a special right now. You can enter the coupon code GREEN10, and that'll give you 10% off. So you can check that out at Vital Plan if you're interested. And then also, as we said, we would have a special offer for you to get Unlocking Lyme for free. That you can get that at unlockinglyme.com. Chapters 26 and 27, I believe, are all about curbing toxins entering the body. There are more specifics on mold and mycotoxins, in addition to a lot of other really good resources for gut health, co-infections, many different topics with Lyme. So I highly recommend you get the book. It's a great resource. It's helped thousands of people already. And so to do that, once again, unlockinglyme.com. And when you get to the checkout section, just enter the code FREEBOOK16 into the coupon area and hit apply. And you should see that discounted so that you only pay for shipping if you are in the US. So that's just $4.95. We'll put this up again at the end of the webinar in case you didn't get all this right now. And let's go ahead and jump into some of your questions here so we can dive a little bit deeper into things you had questions about. So Dr. Rawls, if you'll pop back on, actually, I've got our first question. And this one's from Sarah. She's wondering, can you do too much detox? She, for example, is doing Epsom salt baths, water, I guess clean water, probiotics, dandelion, milk thistle, chlorella, desert biologicals detox kit, lymphatic massage, body brushing, acupuncture, infrared light pads, and on. So can you get too much detoxing?
Alrighty. Yeah, those things sound okay. I think you're okay there. I mean, it's but again, there are a lot of things to do to detox. A lot of people doing detox things. But again, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating vegetables, if you're not doing the basics, then you're not going to get as much benefit from those things. Most herbs are very safe and can be taken a long time. I didn't mention Epsom baths, which is just magnesium. There's some evidence that we do absorb some of the magnesium through the skin. Whether it pulls toxins out of the body, I have not been able to find a shred of science to support that. But again, it feels great. I don't have any problem with doing it. Massage can be a way to help just push some of the toxins out of the body. So I think that's not an unreasonable thing to do. But again, it's I think just moving your body. Basically, if you're moving your body, you're basically doing self massage. You are flushing your tissues with blood, and that is going to pull toxins out as well as anything you can do.
Great, and one related, more closely to Lyme here. A lot of folks on days where they feel like maybe it's increased symptoms. Any recommendations for how to know whether it's the symptoms are indicating a need for detox, or if it's just simply a flare-up of Lyme? Is it sort of a thing where, when in doubt, detox?
Well, it's I did put a whole chapter in the book on that because sometimes it is hard to know: is it a bacterial flare-up? Is it a Herxheimer reaction? It is something that as you get better at it, you get better at understanding relapses and why they're occurring. You start looking for reasons of the things that precipitated it. But it is tough because a lot of times bacterial die-off feel exactly like a food sensitivity. If you've had a food reaction, it feels exactly the same as just a bacterial flare-up. So you have to trace back and say, okay, well, what have I been doing in my life the past several days or week that might cause this? Have I done something that has hit my immune system? Did I have a really stressful day and a bad night of sleep? Adrenaline and cortisol drop your natural killer cells right on down, and that allows the microbes to flourish. Or did I eat something that affected me? And that still gets me from time to time because you do develop new things over time. And it seems like the things that you eat the very most. I've never been a coffee drinker, and I drink coffee intermittently, but I decided this winter I was going to be a coffee drinker. And I started drinking 2 or 3 cups a day, and I ended up having a terrible food reaction to it, to the point that now if I drink any coffee, I have a pretty significant reaction to it. And my gut is very well healed, but you still have some of those lingering things. Now, right now, I don't have many Lyme symptoms. I feel pretty good, but sometimes those food sensitivities will sneak up on me still. And so it can be a variety of things. They can feel very similar, and it's a matter of learning yourself, becoming very self-aware, recognizing what's happening in your environment, being able to trace it back and pinpoint those things. And what I found is over years, I just got better and better and better at it. It still catches me every now and then, but most of the time I can stay well ahead of things. And if I do start to notice something, I can correct it pretty fast.
Awesome. And just for everyone's reference, that those system disruptors Dr. Rawls talked about is a good way to kind of go through what could be going on. That's all in the book as well, and can review that there. But it's always good to go through those when in doubt. Dr. Rawls, the next question here is from Glenn, and he is wondering if should you always detox once you have Lyme, even if you feel like you have it under control?
Again, the whole point of this lecture is the fact that you never stop supporting detoxification, and if you have Lyme and then you get well and then you go back to those same old habits of eating bad food and not eating vegetables and not being aware of your environment and all of these kinds of things, you're going to get sick again. The microbes don't go away. This idea that we eradicate the microbes that cause Lyme disease is absurd. There's absolutely no evidence that that happens with anything. Potent antibiotics, there's very good evidence that even after 6 to 9 months of potent antibiotics, microbes are still there. The only thing that can contain these microbes is your immune system. That is the only thing. And to keep your immune system humming, you need to keep a system that's clean. You need to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to support all systems in your body to keep them running well. So this idea that we detox and then we go right back to what we were doing, that's the way to get sick again, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all about that ongoing practice. So Sue here is wondering, what do you think about the concern that taking detoxifying herbs or some other detoxifying practices can decrease the benefits of other herbs you're taking by pulling them out of your system? Is that a significant concern, in your opinion?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, really. I mean, that's the difference in herbs and chelating agents, all right? I mean, it's like there are a lot of different herbs that are doing different things. When you look at milk thistle and andrographis and dandelion, what those things are doing is protecting the liver so the liver can work better and enhancing bile flow. So they're doing absolutely nothing but complement all the other herbs in the body and certainly not taking away from them. So I think you may be talking more about things that are binding toxins. And again, the best thing you can do to bind toxins is vegetables. Vegetable fiber is the best thing on earth. Vegetables and fruit. Problem with fruit is too much fruit is got too much sugar. But a pretty good assortment of fruit, especially temperate fruits like blueberries and apples and apricots. Those things do have wonderful fiber that does bind these toxins. And those things are not going to interfere in a significant way with the herbs. Now, if you're doing things like bentonite clay or charcoal, that's a different story. Yeah, that could interfere with the herbs if you were doing them together. Possibly chlorella. I've been taking chlorella with herbs for years. I didn't notice very much difference. I became so aware that I could really tell whether an herb was working or not during my recovery. I think ideally you take the chlorella separately because it does have some binding capabilities. Maybe it is affecting the herbs a little bit. I didn't have any problem with it. It made a huge difference in my intestinal tract. It did not seem to interfere with any herbs that I was taking. For me, it worked fine.
Awesome. That's really helpful.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Just trying not to make things any more complicated than you have to, because then you will do them consistently. If you make things too complicated, then you're not going to keep going with it. And it's consistency of doing the same tried and true things.
Yeah, and I know you try to weave that approach into your herbal protocol. And there are a couple people in here, Beverly, Melinda, others that are following your herbal protocol, it sounds like, and they are wondering if there are any things specifically that you would recommend to do in addition to that protocol? Like, what are the top things?
Um, the reason I wrote the book is to complement all of that, and what we are, just to move in a different direction, talking about the program. My goal with the program was not for it to be an end all; it was to be a foundation. So it is somewhat complex to get all the herbs together. So what we were trying to do is pull the main things that most people need as a core together, and and provide that. And half of people, that's all they'll need. But plenty of other people find that they want to do other things to expedite their recovery. Chlorella is one. A lot of people are taking chlorella. A lot of people are taking products with turmeric because it helps reduce the inflammation. There's almost an unlimited number of herbs. And what I want to do with our program is to introduce people to the extraordinary value of herbs, this ancient wisdom that's inherent in the plants that is no longer in our food, and how wonderful these properties are. So I fully expect that by the end of the 6 month period of the program that we have, that people are going to be learning about other things, looking at other things, adding other things on. I don't have any problem with things that complement. Um, but that's a big question to answer completely, and
Sure.
that's why I wrote the book. So a lot of those things are in the book. In the appendix, I put a load of other herbs for people to try, and I hope they will.
Awesome. Yeah, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Dr. Herbal Protocol, Dr. Rawls' Herbal Protocol, we will send you some more information about it in case you want to learn about that more. We get a lot of questions about it. Um, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. Dr. Rawls, this one's from Spencer, and it sounds pretty straightforward, but I know it's something you can probably resonate with having gone through this, and a lot of people deal with this. But he wants to know, how can I balance the Lyme diet, an optimal Lyme diet, so to speak, with a traveling career spent in a hotel room and dining out?
Yeah, it is a tough one, and I had to do a certain amount of traveling through my experiences also. It is getting a lot easier. There's no doubt. If you're in a very rural area, it's a little bit harder to find. If you're in an urban area, food is very readily available. Not to put in a plug for a specific place, but grocery stores like Whole Foods. When I arrive in a location, the first thing I do is pull out my phone and look for a Whole Foods or something like it, like an Earth Fare or similar. And I carry a little soft cooler with me, and I head to that place because I know I can stock up on snack foods. I know that I can get a decent meal there. Um, but most restaurants are now going to have vegetables on the menu. You can ask, I've never been turned down to ask for extra vegetables and no starch on a dish. People that they don't mind doing that. So you can go pretty well from a food point of view. I've had very good success with that. As far as the stress issue, it's balancing it. It's sleeping in hotels. I had to learn how to sleep in hotels, and I just have my little rituals. I've got a Electro fan, which is a white noise generator that goes with me everywhere, and I try to stay in places that are so my body won't recognize them as abnormal, so that I acclimate in a room pretty fast. That's an issue. There was a study showing that the first night in any foreign place, or a place that the body perceives as foreign, half the brain stays awake all night long in anybody, in normal people. And I found that if I stay in the same chains of hotels, they're going to have very similar rooms. and it doesn't bother my brain. If I stay in a place that I've never been exposed to, that's a foreign place, though, I won't get a good night's sleep. So it's just it's learning to create that home environment that what you need to make you stable, food from air from a dwelling, to create that similarity that makes it comfortable.
Great. All right, just a couple more questions. Thanks everyone for sticking through and watching this with us. Hopefully these are really helpful. So to start wrapping it up here, Dr. Rawls, how long before people should feel results of a detox? Is this an immediate thing, or does it take a while to notice that what you're doing is helping?
Well, again, this is the whole recovery. Detox is an integral part of the entire recovery process, and how quickly people respond to that is highly variable. It depends on how long someone has been unwell, and and the other variables: how sick they are, how long they've been that way, how old they are. So you've got to look at all the different variables, but generally what we find is people who are embracing an herbal protocol and doing all these things that enhance the ability of the body to heal itself, including an appropriate approach to detoxification, notice a difference within weeks and certainly within not months. For some people, it's months. For some people, it's years. So it is variable.
Good to know. And what about another one in addition to chlorella, often kind of recommended alternatively to chlorella, is spirulina. Is one better for detox? Let's see, Nancy here says she's heard chlorella is not as good of a detoxifier because it sometimes, quote unquote, drops the toxins before getting them out of the body. Is this true?
I've never seen any science at all that could absolutely prove that. I lean toward chlorella because it's a different substance. Um, it is a single cell algae, where spirulina is a blue-green algae that's more complex. The problem with a lot of the blue-green algae is they can produce a toxin. It's very, very mild, but it's kind of like nicotine and tobacco. Nicotine is in the tobacco leaf because it is a neurotoxin that screws up the insect's neurological system. For us, it's very mild. You just get a little bit of a buzz from it. I actually found spirulina to be a little bit stimulating, and chlorella has just served me better. A lot of people like spirulina. It's a great source of protein. And I'm not trying to condemn spirulina at all. Personally, I just think the chlorella is a little bit cleaner, possibly just a touch safer, and I just personally liked it better.
Great. All right, and last question for you. Does it ever get easier? Christine would like to know because she feels like it's a full-time, it feels like full-time work sometimes. Please address the emotion.
Oh yeah. It's true. Does it ever get easier? It's, I will have to say that it depends on your life, and my life has continued to be very, very stressful and demanding for 30 years. And so that I'm always having to deal with stress. But here at 60, compared to when I was 50, sometimes it's hard to really define aging very well. When I was in my 50s, my knees were shot. I had chronic back pain. I knew I would have a right hip replacement, and I felt miserable all the time. I felt like I had the flu most of my life. I probably worked just as hard to protect my health now, and possibly some ways even better. I've gotten very better. I'm better at it, but I actually enjoy it. you know, enjoy the food. I enjoy planning my life so that I have time to go out and walk. I enjoy being physically active. I enjoy balancing the stress so that I can live, but still be productive. So I think in a lot of ways, my life is just as stressful as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I'm getting more out of life now, and I certainly feel better. You know, I never ended up having that right hip replacement. I have no pain. From the time I was in my early 30s through my mid 50s, I had chronic right hip pain that I knew would be a hip replacement. I have no hip pain. I have no knee pain. I do not have low back pain. I don't feel like I have a flu every day of my life. Um, do I have the ability to perform like all 60-year-olds? You know, I'm not out there running marathons, but I run, walk a 5K several times a week. I paddle a kayak. I'm constantly active. I'm doing the things that I want, but I'm making a difference in the world too. So all these skills that I've learned to balance these things have enhanced my life. So I don't know that it's any easier. I'm still having to be just as vigilant as I ever did. And I'm probably, as I get older, I'll have to be more vigilant to maintain the same level. But it's worth it because it's enhanced my life so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all the candid answers about your personal experience and scientific understanding and just logic here. Everyone always really appreciates it. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Rawls. And
Absolutely, Tim. Thank you very much. And yep, everybody that came.
all right, well, everyone, thanks again for being here. Stay tuned for future webinars. We've got plans for a gut health webinar, in depth, all about gut health. Look out for that in the near future, probably the next month or so. And once again, for those of you that didn't get to see it earlier, Unlocking Lyme is available for free. All you do is pay for shipping. Just go to unlockinglyme.com and enter the coupon code FREEBOOK16, and you can have access to that. It's a awesome resource, once again. So definitely recommend you check that out at unlockinglyme.com. All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching. Hope you had a lot of learnings through this webinar, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night.